She sat at a table for one, until the Mafia Boss whispered, "Tonight, you're my wife." Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now let's go back to the main character. I was sitting at a table for one, hands folded around a glass of water I hadn't touched, pretending I belonged in a restaurant where the chairs were heavier than my rent, and the silverware caught the light like it had something to prove. The hostess had smiled too brightly when she seated me, the kind of smile that asked a question without saying it out loud, and I answered by lifting my chin and ordering something simple, because simple felt safer. The room hummed with low conversations, the clink of glasses, the soft rhythm of a piano somewhere I couldn't see. I told myself I was here to celebrate a small win, a quiet milestone that didn't need witnesses, and that being alone didn't mean being small. Still, I kept my shoulders straight, aware of how empty the chair across from me looked. Then the air shifted. It wasn't loud. It didn't announce itself. It was the kind of change you feel before you understand it, like a pressure drop before a storm. Conversations softened. Laughter thinned. Someone important had arrived. I didn't look up right away. I didn't want to be obvious. I traced the rim of my glass with my thumb and breathed. When I finally lifted my eyes, I saw him across the room, standing like the place had been built around his outline. Dominic Hale. I didn't know his name yet, but my body did. He moved with a calm that didn't rush for attention and didn't need permission. Men shifted to make space. A server paused mid-step. Even the piano seemed to lower its voice. His suit was dark, clean lines, nothing flashy, and somehow that made it louder. He scanned the room once, not hunting, just measuring, and then his gaze found me. It wasn't a stare. It was a decision. I looked away first, annoyed at myself, heart ticking faster than it should have. I told myself I was imagining it, that powerful men looked at everyone the same way, that I was nobody to him, a woman alone with a menu she'd already memorized. My phone buzzed on the table. A message from no one I needed. I didn't pick it up. I felt him before I heard him, the soft step at my side, the shadow that didn't touch me but changed the color of everything. He leaned just enough that only I could hear, his voice low and steady, not sharp, not sweet. "Tonight, you're my wife." The words landed without force and without apology. My breath caught. I turned, ready to laugh it off, ready to ask who he thought he was, ready to stand. He was close enough that I could see the patience in his eyes, not waiting for permission, waiting for truth. Around us, the room kept moving, forks lifted, glasses tilted, lives continued. I realized something then, something quiet and heavy. This wasn't a joke. This was an opening. And whether I stepped through it or not was about to decide everything. I did not answer him right away. My mouth opened, then closed, like my body needed a second longer than my mind to catch up. I felt heat climb my neck, the kind that comes from being seen too clearly in a room full of strangers. "You cannot say things like that to people you do not know," I said finally, keeping my voice low, careful, aware of how close he still was. I expected amusement. I expected irritation. What I got was calm. He straightened slightly, giving me space without stepping back, as if space itself belonged to him. "You are right," he said. "I do not say things like that to people I do not know." His eyes stayed on mine, steady, unblinking. "That is how I know you are listening." I laughed once, sharp and short, the kind of laugh you use to cut a moment in half. "This is not funny," I said. "I came here to eat dinner. Alone." He nodded, like he was agreeing with a fact rather than conceding a point. "You are alone," he said. "Tonight you do not need to be." I pushed my chair back. An inch, enough to feel like I still had control. "I do not need anything from you," I said. Around us, the restaurant kept pretending not to notice, but I could feel eyes sliding away, staff moving just a little faster. He glanced at the empty chair across from me. "You chose this table because it faces the door," he said, "so you can see who comes in. You ordered water first because you wanted time. You keep your phone face down because you do not want to look distracted." I stiffened. He had not raised his voice. He had not touched me, but the accuracy landed harder than a shout. "You should not do that," I said. "Do what?" "Read people like they are lines on a page." His mouth curved. not a smile, just the suggestion of one. It is how I stay alive, he said, and then softened it immediately. It is how I keep people safe. I stood then, heart beating too loud in my ears. I am leaving. For the first time, something like urgency crossed his face, quick and gone. If you leave alone, he said, you will be followed. Not by me. By someone who noticed you before I did. I froze. That is not funny either, I said. I am not joking. He reached into his jacket slowly, deliberately, and pulled out his phone, turning the screen toward me. No names. No pictures. Just a message preview that made my stomach drop. Words I had seen once before in a context I did not like. I had felt eyes on me walking here. I had told myself it was nothing. He lowered the phone. I am not asking you to trust me, he said. I am offering you cover. I shook my head. You cannot just decide things for me. He met my gaze, something firm settling into place. I am not deciding your life, Emily. Hearing my name hit harder than everything else. I did not tell you my name, I said. You did not have to. He glanced toward the door, then back to me. Sit, he said quietly. Let me order you dinner. Let the room see us together. When this ends, you choose what happens next. I hesitated, pride pulling one way, instinct the other. Slowly I sat. He took the chair across from me. Finally, like it had been waiting. The server appeared immediately, relieved. Dominic Hale, he said, not to the server, but to me. That is my name. I did not offer mine again. I did not need to. As he spoke to the server, calm and polite, I realized something I did not want to admit. Whatever I had just stepped into, it was already moving. And he was not the one rushing. The server left, and for a moment we sat in the strange quiet that follows a decision you did not plan to make. Dominic did not reach for his phone. He did not look around to see who was watching. He folded his hands on the table and waited, like time had learned to slow itself around him. You planned this, I said, not accusing, just stating what felt obvious now. He tilted his head slightly. I planned for a possibility, he said. People like me learn to do that. I glanced toward the door again, the glass reflecting a version of me that looked composed enough to be someone else. I do not belong in your world, I said. You do not know my world, he replied. That surprised me. I had expected him to say I was wrong or naive. Instead, he let the space between us hold the thought. The food arrived, beautifully arranged, the kind of plate that made you afraid to touch it. He waited until the server left before speaking again. Eat, he said. You will think better. I picked up my fork to prove something to myself. Taking a bite, I barely tasted. Why me, I asked. You could have chosen anyone. He looked at me then. Really looked, not like he was measuring, but like he was remembering. Because you sat alone and did not pretend you were not, he said. Because you noticed the exit before you noticed me. Because when I spoke, you did not shrink. You argued. I swallowed. That does not explain the wife part. He exhaled through his nose, almost a laugh. No, he said. That part explains itself. I stiffened. He raised one hand, palm open, a quiet promise of restraint. Not in the way you were thinking, he said. In my world, perception is protection. A ring on a finger stops questions. A name beside mine closes doors before they open. Tonight, I need doors closed. Around you. I leaned back, crossing my arms. And what do you need from me in return? He considered that carefully. Nothing that is not already yours to give, he said. Sit with me. Let people see it. Leave when I tell you it is safe. After tonight, you walk away if you choose. I searched his face for the catch. I found confidence instead, heavy and unmovable. You talk like you are used to people saying yes, I said. I am used to people understanding consequences, he replied. The difference matters. My phone buzzed again. This time I looked. A number I did not recognize. No message. Just a missed call. Dominic watched my expression change. That will stop, he said quietly. I set the phone down. You are very sure of yourself. He nodded once. I have to be. Silence settled again, but it was different now. Less sharp. The piano resumed somewhere behind us. A couple at the next table laughed. The world kept spinning, unaware that mine had tilted a few degrees off its axis. He reached into his jacket and placed something on the table between us. Not a ring. A simple card with a name and a number. Dominic Hale, printed cleanly. Not a threat, he said. A line. If you cross it, I will answer. If you do not, this ends tonight. I did not touch the card. I looked at him instead. You said people would follow me, I said. He nodded. They wanted to know why you were here. Now they will assume they already have the answer. I did not like how logical that sounded. When the check came, he took it without looking, standing smoothly and offering his hand like this was the most natural thing in the world. I hesitated, then placed my hand in his. His grip was warm, steady, nothing like the danger my imagination had painted. As we walked toward the door together, I felt eyes on us. Curiosity softened into acceptance. Outside, the night air felt cooler, heavier. A car waited at the curb, dark and quiet. Dominic leaned down, his voice low enough that only I could hear. "Remember," he said, "tonight is about safety. Tomorrow is about choice." I did not know whether to believe him. But as the door opened and the city lights reflected in the glass, I realized something else. For the first time that evening, I was not looking over my shoulder. The car door closed with a soft, final sound, sealing the night outside as if it had been politely dismissed. I expected the interior to feel intimidating, but it did not. It smelled clean, faintly of leather and something understated, and the city slid past the tinted windows in quiet streaks of light. Dominic sat beside me without crowding my space, his posture relaxed, his attention forward, as if this were just another drive home. "You do not have to come with me," I said, breaking the silence when the weight of it grew too heavy. "I can drop you anywhere you choose," he replied. His tone made it clear that the choice was real. I named my apartment out of habit, then hesitated. He repeated the address without comment, and the car turned smoothly, no questions asked. The ride took 15 minutes, maybe 20, time stretching and folding in ways I could not track. My phone stayed quiet. I did not check it. When we stopped, he stepped out first, not to open my door like a performance, but to stand on the sidewalk and look around. Only then did he open it, offering his hand again. I took it, noticing how ordinary the gesture felt now. My building was exactly what it had always been, brick and narrow, the kind of place people passed without seeing. He studied it with interest, not judgment. "This is home," I said. He nodded. "It suits you." I did not know how that could be true, but I did not argue. Inside the lobby, the lights flickered slightly. Mrs. Alvarez at the desk looked up, eyes widening just a fraction before she smiled. "Evening, Emily," she said. "Evening, Mrs. Alvarez," I replied, suddenly aware of Dominic beside me. He inclined his head politely. "Good evening." His voice carried the kind of courtesy that made people straighten without knowing why. We took the elevator alone. The doors slid shut, and for the first time since the restaurant, the space felt small. He did not move closer. He did not speak. I watched the numbers climb, my reflection in the mirrored wall looking calmer than I felt. When the doors opened, he stayed where he was. "This is where I stop," he said. I turned, surprised. "You are not coming up." "No. Tonight was about being seen. This part is about being left alone." I studied his face, searching for expectation, for pressure. There was none. "Thank you," I said, unsure what else fit. He reached into his jacket and held out something small. A simple band, silver, unmarked. "Not a ring, not really. A symbol. You do not have to wear it," he said. "If you do, it tells a story that ends questions. If you do not, the story ends tonight." I took it, feeling the cool metal in my palm. "How long does the story last?" I asked. He met my eyes. "As long as you need it to." The elevator doors chimed softly behind us, impatient. I stepped back, then paused. "Why me?" I asked again, quieter this time. His answer came just as quietly. "Because when I told you who I was, you did not ask for anything. You asked for choice." He stepped away then, giving me my hallway, my door, my ordinary life back. I watched him leave, his presence fading without drama. Inside my apartment, I set the band on the table and leaned against the door, breathing. My phone buzzed once, then went still. I looked at the band again, at how small it was, how much weight it seemed to carry. For the first time, I wondered what story I would tell if I wore it, and whether that story would change him as much as it had already begun to change me. I did not sleep much that night. The city outside my window sounded the same as always, distant sirens, a bus hissing at the corner, someone laughing too loudly 2 floors down, but my thoughts would not settle. The silver band sat on my kitchen table, catching the light whenever I moved, a quiet reminder that something had shifted even though nothing looked different. In the morning, I made coffee, burned the toast, checked my phone. No missed calls. No messages. The silence felt intentional. I went to work, rode the subway with my shoulder tucked into myself. watched reflections blur past the dark glass. Every time someone stood too close, my pulse jumped, then steadied when nothing happened. Dominic had said the questions would stop. For a while, I thought he had been wrong. At lunchtime, a man in a suit lingered too long near my building. In the afternoon, my manager asked if everything was all right at home, his concern a little too careful. But by evening, the tension eased, like a held breath finally released. I stopped at the grocery store on my way back, choosing tomatoes, standing in line, doing ordinary things that grounded me. At the register, my phone vibrated. A message, unknown number. You are safe. That is all. No signature. I stared at the screen longer than I should have, then slid the phone into my bag. Safe was not a word I trusted easily, but I wanted to believe it. Back in my apartment, I picked up the band again, turning it between my fingers. I had not worn jewelry in years. It felt like a promise I had not agreed to make. Still, when I slipped it onto my right hand, the weight surprised me with how natural it felt, like something that had always belonged there. The next day, the change became visible. The man by my building nodded politely and walked on. A stranger who bumped my shoulder on the sidewalk apologized without looking back. At work, a delivery arrived that no one could explain, flowers simple and white, no card. My coworkers teased me gently, speculating, smiling. I laughed it off, but inside, I felt the invisible perimeter settle into place. That evening, Dominic called. Not texted. Called. His voice came through clear and calm. Are you all right? Yes, I said, and realized I meant it. Good. He did not ask where I was or what I was doing. He did not tell me what to wear or who to see. He simply said, I will be at the restaurant on 5th tomorrow night. You are welcome to join me. No expectation. No pressure. I hesitated. And if I do not? Then you continue your life, he said. The offer remains. After we hung up, I sat on the edge of my bed, thinking about choice. Real choice, not the kind you make when every option carries the same cost. The next evening, I found myself standing in front of my mirror, smoothing my jacket, noticing the band glint softly as I moved. I told myself I was curious. I told myself I was in control. At the restaurant, he stood when he saw me, not possessive, just respectful. You came, he said. I sat, heart steady. I wanted to understand the rules, I said. He nodded. Then we will talk about rules. Over dinner, he explained without drama, without names. How perception created safety. How distance could be a form of care. He listened when I spoke, really listened, asking nothing in return. When the evening ended, he walked me to the door and stopped. This does not have to become more, he said. I know. But as I stepped into the night, I realized something I had not expected. I was not afraid of what he represented. I was afraid of how calm I felt standing beside him, and what that calm might cost me if I ever decided to let it go. The pattern settled in quietly. Dinners that were never demanded, only offered. Calls that checked in without checking up. A presence that hovered at the edge of my life without stepping on it. I kept the band on most days, slipping it off at night like a thought I needed to rest from. People treated me differently now, not with fear, but with a subtle courtesy that felt rehearsed. Doors opened faster. Questions ended sooner. I learned the rules without being taught. Dominic did not appear unannounced. He did not send gifts that asked for gratitude. When he did something, it was small and precise, like arranging a meeting to be rescheduled so I could make a deadline, or making sure a cab was already waiting when the rain turned the streets slick. I told myself it was temporary. I told myself it was practical. One evening, I met him at his office for the first time, a clean space with wide windows and no unnecessary decoration. It surprised me how ordinary it felt. This is where you decide things, I said, taking in the city below. This is where I listen, he replied. He poured coffee, offered sugar, remembered how I took it. We sat across from each other, the desk between us like a line neither of us crossed. You keep saying I can walk away, I said. He nodded. You can. Then say it again, I pressed. Say it when I am here. He did not hesitate. You can walk away. I felt something loosen in my chest. Why are you doing this? Then, I asked. He leaned back, considering. Because control that is taken breaks. Control that is given lasts, he said. I laughed softly. You sound like you wrote that down somewhere. He smiled, real this time, brief and warm. Experience is a better editor. The city darkened outside, lights flickering on one by one. I told him about my work, the small victories, the frustration of feeling replaceable. He listened without interrupting, asked questions that showed he remembered details from weeks ago. When I stood to leave, he stood too, but kept his distance. Tomorrow, he said, there is a benefit downtown. I will be there for an hour. If you join me, it will help someone who needs it. If you do not, I will still attend. No pressure, I said. None, he agreed. I did not go the next night. I stayed home, cooked pasta, watched a show I had already seen. My phone remained quiet. The following morning, a headline mentioned the benefit and a new scholarship announced quietly, no names attached. I understood the message. Choice was real here. The week after that, I went. We arrived separately, met inside, exchanged a nod that meant more than a display ever could. People noticed. People always noticed. But nothing was claimed. When it ended, we walked out together, side by side, the city humming around us. You could make this easier, he said, not as a suggestion, more like an observation. I could, I replied. Why do not you? I stopped, turning to face him. Because I need to know who I am when no one is watching, I said. He studied me, then inclined his head. That matters. As we parted, he reached out, stopping just short of touching my hand. One more rule, he said. What is that? You do not owe me for safety. Safety is the baseline. Everything else is earned. I nodded, feeling the weight of that promise settle between us. Walking home, I realized something else had changed. I was no longer measuring my steps by fear or by gratitude. I was measuring them by choice. And for the first time, the path ahead did not feel narrowed by the man beside me, but clarified by the space he insisted on leaving open. The shift came on a Tuesday, the kind of ordinary day that hides its turning points in plain sight. I was leaving work when a woman I did not recognize stepped into my path, smiling like we were already acquainted. She complimented my jacket, asked where I bought it, apologized for the interruption. Her tone was friendly, practiced. As she spoke, her eyes flicked once to my hand, to the band. Then she said Dominic Hale's name, casually, like a shared reference, and my stomach tightened. I did not answer. I nodded politely and stepped around her, my pulse steady only because I forced it to be. The rest of the walk home felt longer than usual, every reflection in every window suddenly suspect. That night, I did not call Dominic. I waited. When he called instead, his voice was the same as always. Are you all right? I told him about the woman, the smile, the way my name had not been used but somehow known. He listened without interruption. When I finished, he said, "Thank you for telling me." That was all. No instructions. No assurances. The next morning, the woman was gone from my thoughts, replaced by a quiet anger that surprised me with its clarity. I went to Dominic's office unannounced for the first time. He looked up as I entered, reading my expression, standing immediately. You should have warned me, I said, keeping my voice level. He did not argue. I should have, he agreed. I waited for the explanation. He offered context instead. Some people confuse proximity with permission, he said. They test edges. It is how they learn where not to step. I folded my arms. And I am the edge. He met my gaze. You are not leverage. You are not a message. You are a person. The fact that someone forgot that is on me. The apology landed because it did not ask for absolution. I took a breath. I do not want to be protected from my own life, I said. I want to understand it. He nodded. Then I will be clearer. He explained the shape of the world he moved through, not names or operations, but patterns. How attention traveled. How silence could be louder than refusal. How symbols like the band created assumptions that closed doors without confrontation. I listened, not because I was afraid, but because knowledge steadied me. When he finished, I said, if I wear this, I decide when and why. Always, he replied. The following week tested that promise. An invitation arrived too. A small dinner, nothing extravagant, a gathering of people whose power came from influence rather than noise. Dominic asked if I would attend with him. I agreed, on one condition. I set the terms. He smiled, slow and approving. At the dinner, I spoke when I wanted, stayed quiet when I chose. When a man leaned too close with a question wrapped in charm, I answered directly and moved on. Dominic did not intervene. He watched, attentive, restrained. On the drive back, he said, "You handled that well." "I did not need you to handle it for me," I replied. "I know." We stopped outside my building, the familiar brick grounding me. I took the band off and placed it in his hand. "Not tonight," I said. He accepted it without comment. "You are still safe," he said. "I believe you," I replied, surprised to find it was true. As I climbed the stairs, I understood what had changed. The power between us was no longer theoretical. It had shifted, not because he gave it up, but because he made room for me to claim my share. And for the first time since that night at the table for one, I knew that whatever came next would not be decided by a whisper, but by a conversation we were finally ready to have. The decision arrived quietly, the way real ones often do, without ceremony or witnesses. A week passed, then another, and the city settled into a rhythm that felt almost forgiving. I wore the band when it served me and left it on the table when it did not. Dominic never commented. That restraint mattered more than any promise. One evening, he asked me to meet him somewhere new, not a restaurant or an office, but a small park overlooking the river, lights strung low, benches worn smooth by years of use. He was already there when I arrived, jacket folded beside him, hands clasped, waiting. "Thank you for coming," he said. I sat, watching the water move with patient certainty. "You said you would be clearer," I reminded him. He nodded. "I owe you context, not because you asked, but because you stayed." He did not dramatize it. He spoke about responsibility, about choosing distance when closeness would cost others more than it gave. He spoke about how power, once taken, demanded upkeep, and how that upkeep could hollow a person if left unchallenged. I listened, aware of how carefully he avoided placing weight on me. When he finished, I said, "You sound tired." He considered that, then allowed himself a small truth. "I am." I folded my hands in my lap. "Then why do this at all?" "Because the world does not pause when I am tired," he replied. "And because I am better when someone is willing to tell me no." I turned to face him fully. "Is that what you want from me?" "Not want," he said. "Respect." He looked at me then, not asking, not claiming. "If you say no, I will hear it. If you say yes, it will be because you chose it, not because I made it easier than the alternative." The river reflected 1,000 small lights, fractured and whole at the same time. I thought about the woman on the sidewalk, the dinner where I set the terms, the way safety had shifted from a gift to a baseline. I thought about how calm I felt when I stopped measuring myself against his shadow. I said, "I am not interested in being hidden behind a title." He nodded. "Nor am I interested in using one to keep you." Silence stretched, comfortable now. He reached into his pocket and placed the band between us on the bench. "I am not asking you to wear this again," he said. "I am asking you to decide whether we keep walking in the same direction. Without it." I studied the band, then pushed it back toward him. "Not yet," I said, but I did not stand. He smiled, not triumphant, just relieved. Then we walked. Time passed in conversation that felt earned. He asked about my plans, my work, my frustrations. I asked about his limits, his failures, the cost of always being the one others waited on. When the night cooled, he offered his jacket. I declined, and he did not insist. We parted with a nod and an understanding that did not need words. Later, alone in my apartment, I placed the band in a drawer instead of on the table. The phone buzzed once with a message that did not instruct or warn. "Thank you for choosing honesty." I typed back something simple. "Thank you for respecting it." As I turned out the light, I realized the truth I had been circling for weeks. Power did not disappear when shared. It changed shape. And the most dangerous thing about the night he whispered that sentence to me was not the claim itself, but how close it came to teaching us both that choice could sound like destiny if you did not stop to listen for your own voice. The ending did not arrive as a dramatic moment, but as a series of small confirmations, the kind that only makes sense when you look back and see how carefully they aligned. It was late afternoon when Dominic asked me to meet him where this story had quietly begun, the restaurant on Fifth that still smelled like polished wood and restraint. I arrived early, deliberately, and chose the same table. For one, when he walked in, the room reacted the way it always did, but I noticed something new. He searched for me first. Not the exits. Not the faces. Me. He stopped when he saw where I was sitting, and something softened in his posture, a private relief he did not hide. I stood as he approached, and for a moment neither of us spoke. It felt important to let the silence say what it needed to say. "You came alone," he said finally. I nodded. "I wanted to remember who I was before you sat down." He smiled, just slightly. And now I know who I am when you do." We sat. No performance. No claim. The server arrived, recognized us both, waited. Dominic looked at me instead of ordering. Your choice, he said. I ordered. We talked about ordinary things first, about work, about the weather turning, about a city that never quite decided whether it loved or tolerated the people who lived in it. Eventually, the conversation found its way to what we had been circling for weeks. I do not want a title that protects me from the world, I said. I want a partnership that respects it. He did not interrupt. I do not want to disappear into your life, he added when I paused. I want a life that has room for someone who will tell me when I am wrong and stay anyway. I reached into my bag and placed the band on the table between us. I slid it toward him, then stopped it with my finger. Not as armor. I said, not as a signal. As a promise we choose every day. He studied the band, then looked up, his eyes steady and clear. Then I choose you, he said, not loudly, not as a declaration, but as a fact. I choose you without the whisper. I choose you without the room watching. The weight of that settled deeper than anything he had said before. When we left, we did not walk side by side out of habit. We did it because it felt right. Outside, the night had the same cool edge it always had, but the city felt less like a maze and more like a place you could stand still in without losing yourself. We stopped on the sidewalk, traffic humming past, lives intersecting and moving on. Dominic did not reach for my hand. He waited. I took his. It was warm, familiar, steady. I sat alone that first night because I believed solitude meant safety, I said. He nodded. And now I know safety is not about sitting alone or together, I replied. It is about being seen and still being free to stand up. He smiled, genuine and unguarded. You were never meant to sit alone twice, he said, echoing a memory without claiming it. I squeezed his hand once, then let go. We went our separate ways for the night. Not because distance was required, but because choice still mattered. As I walked home, I passed the reflections in the windows and did not look away. I saw myself clearly. Not claimed, not hidden, chosen and choosing back. And that was the difference between a whisper that tried to decide my life and a voice I had finally learned to trust as my own.